Welcome, everyone, to the Success Elevated podcast. As always, I'm your host, Hayden Lee, and I'm joined this week by a co-host who's hosted several episodes with me, Mr. Derek Preece, the high priest of marketing. Derek, thanks for joining us today again.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Hayden. I'm super excited, as always, to be able to join you.
Cool.
And I'm super excited about today's topic. It's going to be, I'm way excited about having our guest on here today.
Derek was so excited, he joined us from a hotel room in Las Vegas. So you know it's a big deal when Derek's like, oh yeah, heck yeah, let me get on this, sit down in the corner of my hotel room and let's do this thing. So love it.
That's right.
We are joined, as Derek mentioned, by a very awesome guest. We're super excited to have him on, JT Kraii, who is the founder and CEO of Exit Strategies 360. JT, thanks for coming on the show today.
Well, thanks so much for having me. With all this hype, I'll try to live up to expectations.
We'll try to not set you up too much. We love when people come on our show. We love our guests, and you're gonna live up to it. I have a feeling you're gonna live up to all the hype. So,
appreciate that.
JT, we've this idea, and it's an idea that actually Derek. It was one of the very first videos I ever saw my boss, Derek, talk about. Was talking. I can't remember who you were interviewing, Derek, but you were talking to someone about this whole idea of building to sell, right? And building a business that is ready to sell at some point in your life. Everybody wants to build a business that they can maybe sell and ride off into the sunset, right? I think that might be kind of almost the American dream at some point in everybody's life. And JT, it's a little bit of what you specialize in at your business. And we're going to talk kind of all things encompassing that, how to sell your business and why it's important to build to sell and all of those things. But first and foremost, JT, I'd love for you to maybe kind of chat with our audience a little bit about who you are, what you've done in your career up until this point that's kind of led you to starting Exit Strategies, and maybe some of the milestones that you feel have kind of set you apart as someone that's, can talk about, building a business that's ready to sell and stuff like that.
Well, thank you. I'll try to keep this brief. I could prattle on for a long time here. It's been quite a road. I was an entrepreneur through the 90s, and I never wanted to go to work for somebody when I got out of college, and started a coffee roasting business at 22 years old, and that was successful, and sold that. And what really sort of was the impetus for what I do now is the dismal experience I had when I was trying to sell that business. And I'd hired an advisor, and it was not a large business, but I thought that if that's all that individual is going to do for me, I'm going to sell the next couple. So I had 4 businesses in the 90s. I ended up selling the last 3 myself, right, wrong, or indifferent. That's what happened. Yep. And didn't even realize advisory was a thing until the late 90s, and decided to formalize my skill set a little bit, help some friends sell, went to work for an outfit in Portland, Oregon. I was on the West Coast for almost 30 years. And the office that I went to work for, what they would tell business owners just to get that deal in-house, for them to land that project, it was appalling. And so it wasn't long before I went to the owner and I said, listen, you're doing it one way, I'd like to do it another. I was just that business owner that you talked to, and I want to do it differently. And I was politely invited to be successful elsewhere. And so I stepped out and created Exit Strategies. And the entire premise of what I do is an education. I want business owners at whatever level to make a series of good decisions, and it needs to be based on accurate information. And so I go through an extensive process called evaluation and an analysis, and it's purely meant for that owner to understand what they're worth, why they're worth what they are, some basic answers around wealth preservation and tax planning and premise leases, and if you own the building, why that might not be included. So there's 6 or 8 or 10 really key answers I want them to know and be familiar with, and then start making good decisions. Instead of just looking across the dinner table at your wife or your spouse saying, hey, I'm tired, I think I'm going to sell. And they just don't have enough data to chew on. So that's the premise of how I work, is I'm not on a timing committee. I never push anyone to sell. But when you do sell, I want you to base that on good decisions.
One of the things I thought of, and there's so much there I want to unpack, because there's a lot of, I think, really good information there. But, one of the first things I thought of was the show Shark Tank, right?
Yeah.
And on the show Shark Tank, all of these individuals come on the show and have this, you know, a business idea, and it might already be functioning, or maybe it's just kind of in the infancy or whatever. And they talk about the value of their business. It's so, you know, and maybe they've been trained up more than maybe, you know, I have, and I don't own a business currently, so maybe that's why, but they talk about the value of their business like so fast. They just know, okay, I know if this guy gives me $100,000 for 5% of my company, that means blah, 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 blah. My business is already worth this. It's now going to be worth this. They just know some of that stuff instantly. And I would assume and maybe I'm assuming too much, that there are a lot of business owners out there that don't have that information, which is why, you know, you're able to kind of help with some of those initial things, like, here's what your business is actually worth, right? Which seems like kind of a fairly straightforward, like, you should know this, but I would assume there are probably a lot of business owners out there that probably couldn't give you a straight answer off the top of their head, right? That this is especially in, you know, Derek and I work with the home service industry, where, you know, they might have some equipment and some vans or some trucks, but a lot of the value of what they do is in their services. And they don't necessarily have like a physical building. They say, well, this building's worth $1 million, right? So it seems like I would venture to say, JT, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of what you do is just, some of that initial help is just like, here's actually what your business is worth. And I think, do you feel like there's a lot of business owners that maybe don't know that off the top of their head?
There are, and that's a great question. And let's back up to your Shark Tank example for a minute. That has filled people's heads with a lot of misinformation. Okay?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a big Shark Tank fan. I think I've seen probably every episode out there over the last 8 or 10 years, maybe 12.
Right. Or clips of every episode. Yeah, you've seen
right.
A clip.
And the reason that looks so well rehearsed, Hayden, is that the average Shark Tank presentation is almost 3 hours.
Oh,
we get to see 4 or 5 minutes of it. So it all looks very rehearsed, very polished. It's all right on the tip of the tongue. Well, that isn't actually the case in reality. But it comes across that way. And when we come back to reality and people are trying to learn the value of their business, especially in a home services business, and we'll use disaster restoration, which is what I'm probably most penetrated, the market that I'm in nationally, is they've got a balance sheet that's pretty light, right? There's some vehicles, there's some equipment, some blowers, dehues, a desiccant or two, maybe some semis if there's cat work involved. There are large losses. But the balance sheet doesn't justify a lot of these prices. Right. And so what buyers look for is cash flow. And you can have a $20 million business with $2 million worth of assets, and there's $18 million of goodwill in there. Or you call it blue sky, okay? People intermix those terms interchangeably. And so what is it that brings a business from $2 million in asset value to $20 million in a goodwill value? It's cash flow. And so there's got to be profitability. There's got to be what we call adjusted EBITDA, and that's the adjusted figures that will account for the EBITDA adjustments, balance sheet adjustments, and then personal expenses of an owner. And so there's an art in calculating that and applying some multiples to it. But that is there's 4 or 5 numbers in there that most owners don't know. You know, what is included off the balance sheet? Is there cash? Is there receivables? How about the other assets? How about the liabilities? What is a working capital adjustment? You know, how much do we have to leave behind? And why does that go up if we're growing quickly? There's balance sheet adjustments can account for 8 or 10, sometimes even 15% of a transaction. And most owners don't realize that. So there's mystery around what happens, and it's pretty easy to cut through the fog and deliver some solid information to these owners in just a matter of hours. It doesn't take long, where they can now sit back and say, okay, I get what it all means now. Now let me go to my CPA with a couple of numbers and let's talk taxes and maybe some wealth preservation with an estate plan or a wealth advisor to figure out what's truly left after we pay Uncle Sam.
Do you feel, JT, you know, you spoke a little bit about your past experiences with selling the businesses. Were there some pain points that you felt like were common throughout I mean, obviously it sounded like the latter 3, you were able to sell on your own and figure that out. But what were some of the common pain points throughout all of those different businesses that you feel like relate to some business? Like, what are some business owners feeling as they're getting ready to sell? What are some of those common issues that you feel?
Yeah, loaded question, but I'll do my best there to answer.
There's probably a lot there than just one answer, but
every business owner has a lane, and they're typically very good in that lane. Okay. And when you jump out of that lane and start looking at, let's say, an advisory lane or M&A brokerage lane, there's so many questions, it's easy to get overwhelmed. And they're not used to looking at spreadsheets. And some of these home advisory services, these are not MBA grads that are used to digesting spreadsheets and managing by the numbers and trying to shave a half of a percentage point off labor every year. These are guys who, a lot of them started as carpet cleaners, then went into extraction and mitigation, and then got into full service restoration. Yep. And they're more comfortable with boots on the ground and not sitting in their office looking at a spreadsheet. And so the biggest pain point is the fear of the unknown. They have no idea what the road ahead holds. And that uncertainty causes them to not ask any questions. There's a fear there. And it's real. And I get that, because when I was there 30 years ago, when I sold, in fact, exactly 30 years ago now that I think about it, when I sold my first business, I had no idea what to even ask. And some of my best phone calls today start with an introduction. They tell me a little bit about themselves, and they say, listen, I'm thinking of selling in a few years, but I don't even know where to start. And that gives me a platform where I can tell them, here's what to expect. Here's the emotional ride you're going to go on. Here's the financial bits of data that you need. And I do my best to lead them down that path and stay one or two steps ahead of them. And it alleviates so much angst and turmoil and uncertainty and lack of confidence, really. If I can keep the fog cleared off the road at least a half mile or a mile ahead of them, I can't do the whole thing. There's so much information that if we were to look down, 10 miles ahead, I can't clear it all in one or two sittings because there's just too much data. Right. But I give them enough data to where it eases their ranks moving forward. And over the course of 6, 8, 9, 10 months of selling a business, my goal is to keep them comfortable and educated through that process to stay one step ahead of them. And seemingly it works.
Yeah. Derek, it seemed like some of that resonated with you. Maybe speak a little bit to that.
Well, no, I think I agree with you 100%. I think, when people get into business, they have some kind of a dream. They have some kind of a working for the future, trying to provide a better way for them and their families. A lot of times, I remember when I started my first business, I was like, I just wanted something better, and I knew I didn't want to work for somebody else, and I wanted to provide for my family. And at the time, I was not thinking at all about succession planning, right? It's like, 20 years down the road, maybe my kids will take over for me or something like that. But I agree. I think there's a lot of fear of just because they just don't know the questions to ask, don't know the things to plan for, right? Like what is, like you said a word just a few minutes ago that I think a lot of business owners have no idea what it means. And that's the EBITDA, right? Mm-hmm. Like that's a foreign language to many, many business owners, right? And as they're listening to this, they're thinking, well, do I need to get my Chinese or my Japanese dictionary out to figure out what JT just said there, right? But that's a big deal, like when it comes to trying to value your business. And you and I were talking a few weeks ago when the idea of having you on this podcast really hit me and said, this is going to be a great podcast, because business owners don't know where to go but at some point they're going to be hit with it, and they're going to be saying, what do I do? Do I sell this to my kids? Do I find a buyer? Do I close it down? Do I sell the assets? And you said, especially in the restoration industry, like there aren't a lot of assets. It is a lot of that goodwill, right? And how do you put a value on goodwill is probably, something that is a mystery to business owners.
Well, you're spot on. We're in the service business, and that makes it interesting. People never know whether it's disaster restoration, miscellaneous home services, or what you and I do, Derek. People don't really know what they're going to get when you sell a service. And the most common error that people make, and I was guilty of it, is owners in particular, they know they want to do something different, but they don't know what. Because they don't know the right questions to ask, that gets delayed and delayed and delayed until they're at the end of their rope. Mm-hmm. And they just need out. And then I get the phone call, and the flavor of the phone call is, and typically Friday afternoons are the busiest phone call day for me. Somebody quit, somebody didn't pay, a vendor didn't pay, a client didn't pay, and they're frustrated. And they call, and the flavor is, get me out of here. I'm done. The industry has changed so much. Can you sell it by next Tuesday? And it just doesn't happen. And then I talk about getting them educated in wealth preservation and taxes. And you can feel the deer in the headlight look through the phone. And if it's a Zoom meeting, I can see it and say, here's the things we need to talk about. There's millions of dollars at stake. You've pushed this right to the end of your rope. I want to slow this down. Let's get you some information and make a good decision. And I don't care what it is. And some owners are so tired. The disaster restoration space is great for emergencies, right? 24/7, 365. And some owners never get a proper vacation. But they're so busy trying to survive their day or their week or their month, they don't look 2 years down the road, 3 years down the road. Doesn't happen. So I come along and start talking about real planning. And it's just a foreign concept. And if I can get them to look a year down the road, maybe two, and maybe get some small tweaks made to their business now to make it more profitable month over month, which is going to add to that exit value a couple of years from now, they start putting the puzzle pieces together. And they understand the value of short-term planning and how that ties to long-term planning. But it's a jolt to the system when I start talking 2, 3, 4 years down the road. And that's ideal. Okay. Mm-hmm. And once or twice a year, I always get the phone call from somebody sitting in a hospital parking lot or a doctor's parking lot. And they say, I picked up a card a year ago, 2 years ago from a show. I didn't think I needed you. I'm sitting here now, and we need to sell it right away. And those are never fun. So there's any number of scenarios, but whatever it is, it starts with an education. And then I can move as quickly and as confidently as anyone wants me to or allows me to. But the ultimate goal is to maximize the value at exit. And sometimes that runway is longer than others.
Right. Love that.
Do you feel like, JT, so this whole concept, and it seems like we're kind of hinting at it, and I want to dive in a little further, but this whole idea of building to sell, right? Preparing yourself and your business to be in a better spot so that you don't have to have those scary phone calls, right? Where you're like, I need to sell tomorrow, right? So the idea is, okay, we've got to prep to do that. But I think a lot of business owners out there are like, how do I do that? How do I build to sell? How do I prepare for something that I don't know when it'll happen or when I'll be ready, or, I don't know when my business will be ready itself. Like, what are some things that you help your clients do, I guess, to kind of start that process? When you can get a client that's like, okay, I'm not ready to sell. I want to sell in 3, 4, 5 years. What are some things that you help them do to start that process, build to sell? What do you coach them to do?
Perfect question. Yeah, first, I want them to realize that there's 3 elements at work. There's your personal sphere, what you want as an owner, and that ties to your spouse and your kids and your personal desires and your net worth and your burn rate on cash and what retirement looks like for you. That's a whole decision-making sphere right there. Secondly, is your business ready to go? Okay, if it isn't, and your whole business sphere is separate, let's get it ready to go. You don't have to sell even if it's ready, but let's get it cleaned up. Let's make it more profitable. Let's get it making what it should be making. And the third sphere is the market. Okay, we look at the market the last few years. It's gone up and down. The cost of capital is up right now. The labor was a real challenge the last few years. Private equity was coming in. It's been a real interesting market the last 3-4 years for sure. And we just expand that to 5 to 7 essentially. So these three spheres of your personal space, the business itself, and then the market, at some point those overlap. And ideally, if you're ready to go, the business is ready to go, and the market's good, where those three overlap is essentially a premium. Okay. Yeah. Now, we're not going to control the market, but we've got this personal sphere and the business sphere. Where those circles touch, that's a great price. Okay. We want you ready and we want the business ready. So even if you're not ready, let's get the business ready. So in the upcoming years, whether it's 3, 5, 8, 10, once you're ready, the business is all dialed in, ready to go. The worst combination is you're ready as an owner, the business isn't. Somebody like me comes along and says, okay, let's get your head back in the game. Let's make it more profitable. You're a $12 million business now. We can boost you to 16 or 18 inside of a couple of years, but these few things have to happen. And they don't want to do it. They're on cruise control. Their foot is not on the gas pedal anymore. And that's where I come along and say, here's your options. Here's what you're worth now. Here's what you're worth a year from now. Here's what you're worth 2 years from now. These are the sorts of things that happen. If you want to sell now for 12 million, great. I'll help you out. But selfishly, let's boost that value.
Right.
And I want an owner to get their head in the game. I want them to keep their foot on the gas, because there's nothing more painful from anybody's seat is to take a $12 million company to market that, let's say, is the owner's on cruise control. And they're out a few extra vacations, a few more rounds of golf, a few extra trips with the kids and the grandkids, and the numbers just keep dropping.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And what was a $12 million business is now 10.5 or 10 or 9. And the expectations, their balloon just gets burst. It gets popped. Oh, man. And that's no fun at all. So people need to realize it's what I call short-timers disease. I mean, you see the light on at the end of the tunnel. That is not the time to take your foot off the gas at all. Right. So that's number one. But yeah, let me back up now and talk from around 30,000 feet. This question you asked is an excellent one. And what most people call an appraisal, I call an opinion of value. Okay, they just want to know what the numbers are.
Right.
And the numbers are really easy to get to. That's the science behind what I do. We adjust the balance sheet to figure out what's included, what isn't, whether it's an asset sale or a stock. We get to this adjusted EBITDA term, with Derek, you mentioned. We weight those years accordingly for 2 or 3 years. We hit it with 6 or 7 valuation multiples, and out comes a number. Let's call it 15 million. There's our number. Most people call that an appraisal. Well, that number has no idea whether you're mitigation or restoration. It has no idea whether you're residential or commercial. It doesn't have any idea how many locations you have, what services you offer. It doesn't know if your books are clean, how many lawsuits you've been in. What if you're 98% TPA work versus all direct?
Right.
Okay, there's so many variables that can affect that number. So let's take this 15 million, this hypothetical 15 million. Then I go through what's called an analysis. And the analysis typically covers 10 or 12 variables, key variables, and there's several other miscellaneous ones. But the 10 or 12 key variables are your financial trend, you know, the type of human capital that you have, the tenure of your employees, the dependency on your owner, the type and quality of your asset base, your reputation. There's all sorts of variables that play into this. And let's say you're doing all the right things. Okay, it's not that dependent on you as an owner or you and your spouse if you're a husband-wife team. Your numbers are going up. Your TPA work is minimal. You've got a great staff. You can take 10, 12 weeks off a year and not panic. It's going to be worth more than 15 million. The math puts it at 15, but we might get 15.5 or 16 or 16.5.
Right.
Okay. On the flip side, let's say the math puts it at 15, but your books are a mess. You're all TPA work. You've been in lawsuits after lawsuits because your paperwork's a mess and you haven't wanted to clean those up. On and on and on. Even though the math tells us it's worth 15, there's no way I could get that for it. It might be worth 12 or 13 or 14. You can easily have a $2 or $3 million swing on a $15 million business. And that's what owners don't realize. They think we're going to run some numbers and out comes this.
Yeah, it's a formula. It's a calculation. Yeah.
That's right. And it's so not true.
Yes.
And so when I come along and say, listen, here's the 2 or 3 things we can do differently. And you might be worth 15 now. Is it worth it to hang in there another year and a half for another $1 million? Well, I can't make that call, nor am I on that committee. But if I pose that question, now they get to go home and say, gee, honey, guess what? We've got these options and here's what we're looking at. Is this enough money for us? And the sales price of a business is one thing. And then what is it going to be? What I call your pre-tax yield. That's prior to paying taxes. And then the figure that really means something is walk away. What I call a walk away figure. Post-tax, what do you get to walk away with? And is that going to be enough? Well, now let's talk estate planning and wealth preservation. And are we going to put that into a trust? Do you need the money right away? If not, what are your plans? Do we need it 5 years from now? Are the kids still in college? What's your burn rate now versus 5 or 10 years from now? Is there going to be legacy planning with the kids? And those are the types of things I want to cover. This sounds super complicated, but literally in a matter of hours, I can have some answers to these individuals. And it just clears the fog, to come back to that analogy. Now we're getting down to real decision-making criteria that they've got something to count on, not just, gee, honey, I'm tired. I want to do something different.
I want to go fish or golf. I just want to be done. Right.
That's right.
Derek, he hit at something kind of interesting there that I wanted to, without going too much off on a tangent, but the idea of TPA work factoring into that. Did you hear? I was fascinated that when you said that, JT. Because we recently got to participate in this thing with CNR magazine called The State of the Industry. I don't know if you saw any of that or were aware of any of that, but there was a several sections of this report that Michelle was able to kind of put together over at CNR, where she talked about TPA work and how, it was interesting that there was a good mix of businesses that do, a decent amount of TPA work, but the majority of them want to get out of doing as much as they've been doing. And I hadn't even thought of the idea that it factors into the valuation of your business. It hadn't even crossed my mind, but it makes sense. It totally does. Like, how much are you actually bringing in of your own business versus having to go to these third parties to find it?
That's right. And, we all know that a TPA will replace your sales department if you want it to, right? Yeah. And then you're sort of beholden to those metrics and reporting requirements. And experienced operators more and more over the last decade have said, we want to tap out of TPA work. It's not worth it. It's not worth the frustration. And it makes the top line look great, but not necessarily the bottom line. And listen, they serve a place in the industry.
Right.
But for experienced operators, especially when they're looking to sell, buyers would much prefer a full service company to cap their TPA work at 20%, 30%, sometimes up to 50%. You get above that, there's not many buyers who stand in line for those businesses. It's just too risky, and decisions get made in a glass office somewhere, and your palm scores drop a little bit, and all of a sudden you're off a program for 6-8 months and you're scrambling to get back on. There is risk there that a buyer just doesn't want to take.
I agree. I totally agree. It's interesting that you brought that up, because that's true. I think if you're a buyer, you don't want to have, it's not as attractive when a business is dependent on those types of metrics.
Correct.
I mean, you've probably seen it, Derek, just going to trade shows and things like that, right? I mean, before the State of the Industry even came out, I'm sure you felt that at trade shows, that people are like, I want to not be doing as much TPA, and I'm sure you're seeing that or hearing that just with connections in the industry. But
TPAs are really sexy at the beginning. Like,
right.
I mean,
it's the top line, right? Like TJT was saying, like, you can immediately improve your top line just by working with these.
Especially when you're like a solopreneur, you're wearing a lot of hats, and they take out the need for, like JT said, they take out the need for a sales department. and they offer some consistent work, right? So the idea that you don't have to always worry about your phone ringing, and that's like the sexy girl in the room. But that quickly, like, is the more you become, the more you experience you get, the more you get to understand your numbers, and the more you see those profit margins shrink, the less and less attractive it becomes. And there comes a point, and I think in a lot of business owners, especially from the restoration side of things, who want to be less dependent on them. I mean, and just like JT said, like, when you have over 50% of your business dependent on TPA work, and you screw up, and the requirements to stay on those things is ridiculous in many cases, but you make a mistake and they slap your hand and take you off the program for 6 months, your phone stops ringing, and you have a business built around that volume. Yeah, it's a scary, scary, scary day in a business owner's life if and when that happens.
Well, and there's so many other variables too, gentlemen, that business owners can control much easier. Here's a quick example. I valued a company a year and a half ago, north of 20 million, great company, the right kind of commercial work, etc. And he and his wife are in the business, and she was doing the books. And it is kitchen table accounting at north of 20 million in value, almost 30 million in sales. Valued the business. And when I delivered the valuation analysis, I said, "You're not sellable." And he said, "That's BS. We do everything right. We're doing a good job. I'm sellable." Because of this feeding frenzy that's happening out in the market, he didn't believe it. And I said, "Your books are a mess. No lender is going to look at your books and loan on your business. No buyer is going to have confidence that you know what you're doing. You can't even pull the basic information that's needed." I said, "You need a consultant, and let me refer you one just to help clean your books up. For $10,000 or $12,000, we can clean those books up." And he basically fired me, and then came back 6 months later and said, "Okay, well, I've talked to a few people. You are correct. I'm not going to be able to move this. What was that referral again?" And we got it cleaned up, and we're now on the market. Literally, we're on the market right now. We have one offer in and another one pending. Wow. And it's too simple. Some of those things are too simple to correct, but sometimes a business owner just don't want to be told that any portion of their baby is ugly. So you've got to be able to handle that with kid gloves and say, "Listen, this is the buyer's perspective of what they're expecting to see, and you don't meet those expectations right now." Doesn't make it wrong, because back to this clean books example, it's worked for that couple for decades. It's worked. Right. It's not going to work for a buyer. So there are variables that are easy to fix and some that are not.
Yeah. Love that. That's great. Great advice. Great counsel. That's awesome.
Yeah. I want to throw in a question here, JT. I feel like I know the answer. And so this might be kind of a dumb question, but I'm going to ask it anyways. But there's the common analogy, Derek, I'm sure you've heard this, where the best time to plant a tree was 10 years ago, and the second best time is today, right? Like that analogy has been a thing. And I relate that to this concept of building to sell that we've been discussing. Is there ever a point that it's too early to start this process of building to sell at some point? Like, can a business owner start this, have these pieces, these building blocks in place from day one? Or is it something that they've got to kind of get a few years under their belt of owning the business before they're kind of ready to do that? Maybe speak to this, some of these newer business owners, new restoration or home service industries. Is it ever too early to start some of these building blocks?
The textbook answer is that no, it's never too early. The realistic answer is get a few years under your belt. Yeah. Really understand the business, learn how to refine the craft and make it as profitable as you can. And that's the reality of it, right? I mean, we're in this emergency space and people have a hard time planning. So what I like to say is when you've got questions that start keeping you up at night, about value and the road ahead. And listen, any restoration company of any size right now, and many home services, businesses in the home service industry, they've been approached. It's common. Okay.
Yeah.
It's people call me all the time and say, I just got an email. I just got a call. What should I do? And when those answers start to creep up, and you're going to entertain them. It's one thing to be courted by somebody, get an email. It's another thing for that to seriously weigh on your mind. And when you start feeling the need for answers, even if you think you're several years out, get a few answers. Okay. Derek, you brought up a term that I use regularly. It's nice to be the pretty girl at the dance.
Yep.
It is. It's people are sizing you up. They want to take you to the dance, and they want to take you home afterwards, right? And it's flattering, but you don't know a good deal from a bad deal.
Yeah,
you don't. And so get a little bit educated, and it doesn't take long to do that. And so what I say to your question is, at a minimum of 5 years, start to plan. Okay. There are people who with multiple owners, let's say an owner and a couple of minority partners, they might have a GM and a lead estimator or PM or something that's a minority owner, and they go through these annual valuations. There are companies I value every year to let them know right where they stand, what they're worth, how they've grown, how to tweak it to make it better, et cetera. But at a minimum, when you're about 5 years out, get a temperature reading of where you're at, how a buyer is going to view your business, and really get the 4 or 5 bullet points on how to make it the most sellable, even if it's just the low-hanging fruit. If that's what you have energy for, go for that. And that dedication and the few hours that are involved, it'll come back to you in spades, not only in peace of mind, but in the exit value when you do decide to sell.
An actual dollar number. Yeah. Like that. It makes all the difference. So I appreciate that answer. I think a lot of people are like, well, I should start if I'm starting a business tomorrow, I got to start getting ready to sell it tomorrow. And while it's probably good to have some building blocks in place, I think that's a great answer. I think 5 years is a good number. Like if you're getting close to that 5-year mark, you're 5 years from being ready to sell, like start talking about a game plan. Like let's put together some kind of strategy so that we know how best we're gonna get out of this thing that's gonna make us the most money, right? Like that's a concern, but also like make everything as smooth as possible. I think there's value in making it smooth for everybody involved. So
there is. And another variable that makes the road a little bumpy is that people get intimidated by the term exit strategies. Yep. Right? What is an exit strategy? They think they're going to go meet with a bunch of suits somewhere and run a bunch of numbers, and it's this exhaustive process. It doesn't have to be. It just simply doesn't have to be. It's not that complicated to get an education and make some good decisions. And so that the fear of the unknown there is a roadblock for some. And my advice is just make a phone call to your CPA or attorney or to somebody like me and get a few answers and understand what the road ahead is. Then you can choose to play or not, but at least get a roadmap of where you're headed. And if it's intimidating, if you're intimidated by the whole process, you're probably talking to the wrong individual.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Great advice.
Love that. Well, I want to, before we kind of move on, I want to make sure we hit at, some things that are going on and some trends that I guess, Derek and I have talked about this a little bit that are going on in the restoration industry. It seems like there's a lot of private equity money out there that is being thrown in the direction of restoration companies. There's a lot of restoration companies that are getting bought by national franchises or whatever it might be, but it seems like there's a lot of money now, and talking about the market a little bit, a lot of money now coming into these industries to purchase some of these, these ma and pa restoration companies that have been in business for 25 years. And so if you wouldn't mind, JT, maybe speak a little bit about some things that you're noticing that are going on in the market currently, and maybe some things that business owners need to be careful of. Do they need to watch out for some pitfalls that might be out there?
Yeah. Well, I've been doing this for 25 years now, and oddly enough, that really in 7, 8, and 9, when I got pulled into the disaster restoration space, I knew that it was a recession resistant industry, maybe even recession proof. I had no proof of that, but I had a sense. Well, it held up really well in 8, 9, and 10. Okay, so that was pretty good. So at 11, 12, 13, I started beating the private equity drum that this is a pretty safe place to park some money. Yeah. And I started recruiting private equity firms. That's been 10, 11 years ago now. And my efforts probably had very little to do with the attractant of the entire private equity world to this space. But as businesses suffered through 8, 9, and 10, they realized they wanted and needed to diversify a little bit. Well, here comes the pandemic. It held up really well again through a pandemic. We were an essential industry. Well, after that, really now funds started flowing in. And there was a feeding frenzy is the way to put it. And they drove up the multiples the last 3, 4, 5 years, in particular in this space. They started overpaying what industry buyers would pay for. Well, now all of a sudden we've got industry sellers saying, wow, we've got all these buyers out there. Let's go get some private equity money. And what they didn't understand, and there's been dozens and dozens of very high profile sales. We could all list 6 or 8 of them right now and know who they are. But what's happened is that frenzy attitude has rolled over. You mentioned the mom and pops, and there comes a point where it's too small of a business. Private equity is not interested in businesses throwing off $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 a year. Most want north of $1 million in adjusted EBITDA. Many prefer north of 2 million. It's got to be something of some size and some substance. Okay. Right. And so now what's happening is the industry sellers are on board, and they call me and say they want to sell to a private equity group. What they don't realize is that many are still looking to get in for the first time. And it's called a platform company. When an equity group buys their first business in a specific industry, it's called a platform company. Many don't know what they're looking at. They don't understand the dynamics of the industry. Many they own businesses that sell a widget. And that widget is manufactured consistently Monday through Friday. It's their whole world revolves at 210 around a 210 net 30, when it comes to accounts receivable, and they get it. Virtually no bad debt, same clients for years. And they look at this space and there's no predictability about consistency of clients. Okay. Right. You need to tell me if you're running 150 water jobs a month, next month it's 150 different water jobs. Okay. Yeah. And what do you mean you get paid in 48 days or 45 days? Or if you're really good, 36 or 37. And on a large loss, it might be 6 months or 9 months. Cat work might be a year or 2. You can hear their head explode. They don't even know what to do with that data. It's so different. Working capital calculations on large loss and the cat work, the lumpiness of those sales. So due diligence is a real bugger. They want in. And they overall, they're attracted to the space, but due diligence is brutal. And I prep sellers for that we may get a little bit more money. The chance of success through due diligence and getting to the closing table drops substantially if we're working with a private equity group versus an industry strategic, meaning the 10 or 12 big industry buyers out there versus an industry individual like the GMs, the PMs, the estimators. They're all, some of them are tired of working for the man. They want their own business. Yep. That is a much smoother due diligence because everybody knows what they're looking at. Yep. So there are pros and cons to private equity across the board, and they're real once you get into due diligence.
Oh, that's fascinating. That whole world, it just seems like it's really exploded. And Derek, you could probably talk a little bit more to this at trade shows and things. It just seems like it's just been crazy, the market. And all of that just seems so fascinating to me. And yeah, the pitfalls for an owner when it comes to that due diligence, it seems like it would be a little scary or a little frustrating, if nothing else, at least frustrating that, they're checking and rechecking again and again. And it just, it seems.
And on a whole other level, when you're working with an industry buyer, they don't expect you to stick around nearly as long as private equity does. Private equity, they don't have a bench of GMs and estimators and project managers The team that you're selling is the team that they need to move the ball
Right.
forward. An industry buyer, there's a little more flexibility in how long you stay. And there's a lot of sellers, speaking of trends, there's a lot of sellers right now who don't want to go from running a $20 million a year successful restoration company and 2 months later they're at home sitting on the sofa.
Yeah.
That's an uncomfortable place to be.
Oh yeah.
There's too big of a dichotomy there. And so sellers are rolling over some equity. They're picking the parts of the job that they like, whether it be sales or being a PM out in the field. Maybe it's just recruiting large loss and cat work, but they get to keep a toe in the water. Let's say they roll over 10, 15, 20, 25% equity and let either the private equity group or the industry strategic help grow that business through acquisition and greenfielding locations, et cetera. And now they're along for the ride. They're still going to put 10, 15, 20% of that money to work. And let's face it, invested in the space is still better than the stock market.
Oh,
so
yeah.
they're willing to do it. And let's say they're working 25, 30 hours a week, and that's part-time to some of these guys.
Oh, yeah.
They're happy to take a year or 2 or 3 and do that on a part-time basis.
So cool. So cool. All that stuff is just.
Yeah, we need about 2 more hours here, gentlemen.
I know. It's like, this is a topic you could talk about for hours and it doesn't get boring. It's just like, see, I told you this was going to be a great episode.
You didn't lie, Derek. And we could have we could have a whole series about this stuff because there's so much here. And JT, I don't want to keep you too much longer. I know you've got a lot on your plate, but I really think this is so valuable for our clients and for the, our audience in particular, that like understanding some of these crucial pieces to getting your business ready to sell, involving someone that knows what you're going to come up against, knowing that there's going to be some, like when private equity money might sound nice. A private equity group's coming to you and wants to buy your business. That sounds great for a minute, but you've got to understand that, hey, they might ask you to stick around for a little while, and they might,
That's right.
The situation might be a little bit different depending on what the books are. It's just, there's so much there that I think, can be scary to business owners. If nothing else, can just, and that fear can almost keep them from making some of these decisions. Like you said, that the fear of what might hold in the future, what the future might hold, keeps them from moving forward. And at the end of the day, you've got to reach out for help, ask those questions.
Well, and I always encourage that, of course, because there's also so much misinformation out there. Yeah, somebody will call and say, a buddy of mine sold for a 3x multiple, or they sold for an 8x multiple. And I'll say, a multiple of what? Yeah. And they say, I don't know. I just know it's an 8x. Well, that sounds really good, but until you know what the multiplier, what they were using, what number, they'll say, they'll take some of this misinformation and apply it to their business and think that they're on the 1 yard line ready to go to the end zone, and they're not. There's things that need to, it's applied in the wrong way. And so, if it's a smaller business, 3, 4, 5 million, and it's SBA financeable, that's a very different sell in a communication style to that business owner or owners. And then working with that GM that's coming from a firm that wants to buy their own business, and they're in their mid 40s or late 40s, and they're willing to risk it all to buy their business. Those are wonderful sales as well. But that's a very different conversation than a 20 or 30 or 40, $50 million business talking about a private equity group or an industry strategic. And ultimately, a transaction has a lot of the same variables, but it's a different language as you wade through all those variables to educate each owner.
Right. Oh, yeah. So much there that I think we could dive into, but I'm not gonna do it today, because I value your time, JT. And so I'm pretty confident we're going to have you back on to talk more about this stuff. But Derek, anything you want to make sure we highlight for our audience about, or any other questions you want to ask JT while we've got him cornered right now? Anything else you want to bring up?
Oh, my mind is spinning, just like with all kinds of questions. And it's been, I think this is such an awesome topic because there's just so much fear of not knowing. Yep. And people coming into their business not knowing what they're going to do, and the fear, like you said, the fear paralyzes them, and they don't don't do what they need to do to prepare for the future. Whenever that future is, like you said, it could be a year, 5 years, 10, maybe it's not even, sometime soon, but preparing for that needs to start happening. So JT, like, you're the man. I'm glad we brought you on here. This is
thank you. I appreciate it.
JT is the man. Yeah.
We could go down about 8 different rabbit holes here, so I'm sorry to touch on some of those, but there's a lot of information out there to discuss.
It's so great. Awesome. Well, JT, I'm going to finish. I'm going to wrap up the podcast with the same 3 questions we ask all of our guests. Like I said, I don't want to keep you too much longer, but I think this portion of the podcast is kind of fun to compare notes against all the cool guests we've had on. So, first things first, favorite book or podcasts that you're reading or listening to right now that you really enjoy?
Well, the one that I always say is not the one I'm reading now, but the one that changed my life and how I view my businesses, and I've referred it to many restoration owners and restoration related, is A Profit First. You may have heard of that book.
Okay.
And I can never pronounce the guy's name right, but it's
Mike McAlwitz.
And excellent book. And there's been several people that I've referred that to. Again, it's called Profit First. And it fundamentally changes how you look at your small business. And it's just too simple. You first read the concept and you think, well, that can't be the whole book. And it is. And it's just that simple, and it's just that powerful. So I love things that are simple yet powerful like that. So that's, I love it. I love what it did for me. I love what it's done for clients. So simple answer on that one.
Love it. Okay. Question 2. I know you wear a lot of hats and you're helping a lot of different people right now. What do you do to relax at the end of a long day? We were talking briefly before we started recording about, what you said, some of the business owners, we work half days, but it's hard deciding what 12 hours that is, right? Like we work long days, long days. So what do you do to relax? What do you do to recharge the batteries at the end of a long day?
Well, my wife and I live in beautiful St. George, Utah, very southwest corner. We're not far from Zion's National Park and Bryce and Moab and, Snow Canyon, all these beautiful parks. So we're outdoor people. We like to hike and bike, and anything outdoors is a good day for us. And if we're not doing that at night after a long day, we've got to be FaceTiming those grandkids. They just make it all work then. We tell the kids we like them, but we love the grandkids.
We love the grandkids. There we go. Right. I think my bosses would probably agree with you. Katie, especially, she likes her kids, but she loves her grandkids. So.
That's right. Yep.
Last question, JT. This has been super fun for me to kind of pick your brain and learn about what you do. If you could rewind to the beginning of your career, whether it was the beginning of when you started that first coffee roasting business, or maybe it's the beginning of exit strategies, if you could rewind to the beginning of it all, what would be one thing you would tell yourself?
I would tell myself, that's a complicated question. Boy, you're going to regret asking that one, I'll tell you. I would tell myself a couple of things. Okay. Number one, to believe in yourself. Ask a few more questions. There was a time in my life when I had success early. Okay. And that isn't necessarily good for a person when they're young. And so I went through a phase in my early 20s when I thought I could conquer the world. And that's when you get bruised and beaten up a little bit and you don't ask enough questions. So I would tell myself to ask a few more questions. And right behind that, I would tell myself that it's all going to work out. That with a work ethic, and I grew up on a ranch in Montana. I'm used to hard work. That it's never scared me. But with a few questions asked and the right work ethic, it can't help but work out. And I didn't believe that when I was little. I thought I had to claw and scratch my way for every nickel and dime I got and every success I had. But it tends to work out. And I've learned that over the years. So that was a big lesson learned. And I think I'm still learning it on some level. But that's a valuable piece for me.
Oh, so good. So good. JT, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. Like both Derek and I have said, I think we're going to have you on again, because this was amazing. And we could just go fully into so many different pieces of this conversation, but really at the end of the day, just thank you so much for coming on, and hope to have you on in the future.
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much for having me.
Awesome. Thanks, JT.
All right, take care.
Love to have you.
We'll talk to you later. This has been Success Elevated, making you a little bit better one show at a time. Thanks for joining us. Please subscribe on YouTube or any other major podcast platform to listen to more episodes. We are proudly brought to you by Spot On Solutions. If you'd like to learn more about how we can help you grow your business, please check us out at spotonsolutions.com.